I suppose everyone thought I'd lost my mind when I brought Harold home. A 62-year-old man with a donkey. Can you imagine? My daughter Sarah called 3 times that first week, each conversation dancing around the same question without quite asking it directly. My son Tom was more blunt. "Dad," he said, "what on earth are you going to do with a donkey?" I didn't have a good answer then. I'm not sure I do now. But sometimes in life, you just know something is right, even when you can't explain it to anyone else. Even when you can't quite explain it to yourself, Dodd. It started at the county fair last spring. I'd been going alone since Barbara passed 2 years ago. She always loved the fair. The cotton candy, the 4-H kids showing their animals, the way the evening light would filter through the trees near the livestock barns. I kept going because it felt like keeping a promise to her, to us, to the life we'd built together. I was walking past the livestock auction when I saw him. This old gray donkey standing in a pen by himself. He had the saddest eyes I'd ever seen on an animal. They reminded me of how I felt most mornings, waking up to an empty house, lost, uncertain, wondering what the point of the day ahead might be. The auctioneer was trying to generate interest, but no one was bidding. "Come on, folks," he said. "Somebody give this old fellow a home." But the crowd was thin, and those who were there were looking for younger animals. Practical animals. This donkey was past his prime, and everyone could see it. I raised my hand before I knew what I was doing. $54. That's what he cost me. $54 and the beginning of everything changing. Getting him home was an adventure. My neighbor Frank loaned me his trailer, shaking his head the whole time. "You know anything about donkeys, Robert?" he asked. I admitted I didn't. "Well," he said, "I guess you're about to learn." The first few weeks were harder than I expected. Harold, as I decided to call him, was stubborn, which I suppose makes sense for a donkey. He didn't want to be led. He didn't want to be brushed. He mostly just stood in the old shed behind my house, looking at me with those sad eyes whenever I brought him hay or water. I started spending time just sitting with him. I'd bring my morning coffee out to the shed and sit on an overturned bucket, talking to him while he ate. I told him about Barbara, about how we'd met at a church social 40 years ago, about our children, about the hardware store I'd run until I retired, about how strange it felt to suddenly have so much time and nothing meaningful to fill it with. Harold never responded, of course. But he listened, and slowly, over weeks that turned into months, something shifted between us. He'd walk over when he saw me coming. He started to lean into my hand when I brushed him. Sometimes I swear he'd make a soft sound in his throat, almost like a sigh. When I'd scratch behind his ears, my daughter Sarah came to visit in July. She stood at the fence watching me with Harold, and I saw her eyes get misty. "You look happy, Dad," she said quietly. I realized she was right. For the first time since Barbara died, I woke up each morning with a sense of purpose. Harold needed me, and I suppose I needed him too. That's when I got the idea. There was a nursing home about 5 miles from my house. Barbara had volunteered there for years, playing piano for the residents. I'd stopped going after she passed. It hurt too much, but I remembered how much the residents had loved when anyone brought animals to visit. Dogs mostly, sometimes cats, but never a donkey. I called the activities director, a kind woman named Helen. "This might sound strange," I said, "but I have a donkey. Would the residents enjoy a visit?" There was a long pause. Then she laughed. Not unkindly, just surprised. "Well, Robert," she said, "that would certainly be different. Let me check with the administration." She called back 2 days later. They'd love to have us, but I'd need to make sure Harold was gentle, that he wouldn't startle easily. I looked at Harold, who was dozing in a patch of afternoon sun. Gentle? He was the gentlest creature I'd ever known, Our first visit was on a Tuesday morning in August. I was more nervous than Harold. I brushed him until his gray coat shone, cleaned his hooves, even tied a blue bandana around his neck because it seemed like the thing to do. The residents were gathered on the patio when we arrived. About 20 of them, some in wheelchairs, some with walkers, all looking curious. Helen introduced us. I felt foolish for a moment, standing there with a donkey on a lead rope. But then something wonderful happened. An elderly woman in a wheelchair, someone Helen later told me rarely spoke anymore, reached out her hand toward Harold. He walked right to her, gentle as a whisper, and he lowered his big gray head so she could touch his nose. She started to cry. Happy tears. I had a donkey when I was a girl, she said. His name was Smokey. I haven't thought about him in 60 years. After that, everyone wanted to meet Harold. He moved from person to person with a patience and intuition that amazed me. He seemed to know who needed him most. An old veteran who'd been sitting alone pressed his forehead against Harold's neck and stood there for a full minute, his shoulders shaking. A woman with dementia sang him a song she remembered from childhood that we started going every Tuesday. Then Thursdays too. Word spread and other facilities asked if we'd visit. By October, Harold and I were going somewhere almost every day. He transformed from a sad-eyed donkey no one wanted into something remarkable. A bridge between the present and the past. A gentle reminder that connection matters. That we're never too old to need tenderness. My children don't question it anymore. Last month, Tom helped me build a better shelter for Harold. Sarah brings her grandchildren to visit, and they brush him and feed him carrots. My neighbors stop by to say hello to him. Frank jokes that Harold's more popular than I am. He's probably right. I'm 62 years old, and a donkey changed my life. No one believed I'd do this. Take in an old animal, bring him to nursing homes, find purpose and joy in something so unexpected. But Harold believed. And in the end, that's what mattered. Sometimes on quiet evenings, I sit with him in his shelter. I scratch behind his ears and tell him about my day. About the woman who smiled for the first time in weeks when she saw him. About the man who told me Harold reminded him of his grandfather's farm. About how grateful I am that Harold leans into me, warm and solid and real. And I think about how the best things in life often come when we're not looking for them. When we simply follow our hearts, even when it doesn't make sense to anyone else. $50-4. That's what Harold cost me. But what he's given me back, that's priceless.